A few days ago, I was enjoying a bit of nostalgia, looking through all the majors of CSGO history and found something odd. When you look at the playoffs of most majors, it's always the usual suspects. Astralis, Na'Vi, FaZe, Liquid, Fnatic, NIP and Virtus Pro. Yeah, sometimes you'll see a fairy tale run like Gambit winning the major, but usually that's just one team defining all the odds. Other times you get one or two unknown teams in the quarterfinals, but by the semis, they always choke out and it ends up with the big boys playing on stage. Then you get to Berlin 2019, Astralis, NRG, Renegades, Vanguard. Huh? This semi-final bracket straight up looks like it's from some alternate reality or someone at Valve swapped out half the logos while nobody was watching. One of them is the greatest team in CSGO history, but the other three? Most casual fans have never even heard about these teams. Berlin had a top 27 team and a top 17 side in the semi-finals of the most important event of the year, on the same side of the bracket, which only meant one of them was going to make the major final. What the hell happened here? The weirdest part is that the semis are only the tip of the iceberg. The deeper you dig into Berlin, the more the whole major starts looking cursed. All the good teams were there and somehow almost every single one of them got f***ed in a different way. Astralis were there, the final boss of Counter-Strike, back-to-back major champions, the team every miracle run eventually had to answer to. Liquid were there too, and for once they were not just chasing Astralis. They'd just won the Intel Grand Slam and looked like the team that had finally taken the scene away from them. Na'Vi still had Simple, Vitality had ZywOo, FaZe were there, alongside G2, Mouse and NIP. This should have been just another major, but straight away, the number 2 team in the world, Team Vitality, gets f***ed by Dream Eaters? Who? The number 2 team in the world, with ZywOo on the server, had just lost to an unknown Tier 3 Russian roster ranked 72nd in the world entering the major. We're getting awfully close to 3 digits there. Despite this being the challenger stage, this Vitality roster was the team to beat right behind Team Liquid. They were outperforming Astralis, and they were fighting with Liquid to be the number 1. Yet they found themselves at 1 and 2 in the Swiss, barely hanging on right at the beginning of this major. HLTV commenters were having a field day. Dream Eaters should have been everyone's safest 0-3 choices in the pick'ems. Still, everyone's focus was more on Vitality throwing rather than the Russian side playing well. Should they have been given more respect? This actually wasn't their first upset. They had already beaten NRG, the top 6 team in the world, just one day prior. Another completely absurd victory when you again consider their ranking. There's 2 clear perspectives to their early run. Dream Eaters proved that they were much stronger than most thought, and the teams that should be in control for a title run already look shaky. After beating Vitality, they were 2-1 in the Swiss stage, and they found themselves facing Crazy for a spot in the Legend stage. That's another odd name to be doing this well in the tourney. The young Balkan core would have been on more people's radars due to being established at the highest end of Tier 2. But come on, they aren't a famous major name. The entire roster is making their major debut, yet they showed comfortability beating Brazil's best team at the time, Furia, and advanced to the Legend stage. The major script is usually different. Pressure for all is at a maximum. Therefore, the elite often crush the inexperienced teams. But not this time around. Furia, Complexity, and Hellraisers were all knocked out this early, while Vitality had barely scraped through. But still, we haven't gotten to see the big dogs yet, except Vitality, who weren't even supposed to be there. These teams weren't cream of the crop, so perhaps the upsets weren't quite as outrageous as they seemed. Just a few years earlier, this wouldn't have even been considered part of the major. It would have been a LAN qualifier, without stickers or the same level of attention, and these results would have almost been forgotten about immediately. Everything should get back to normal in the Legend stage, right? By the way, a full team of people worked on this video. If you'd like to help us make more content like this, check out today's sponsor, Fast. They're a trusted site and have already been in operation for over 10 years. You can instant top up with skins and play a huge number of games with lots of modes. When you use the secret word DWEG, you'll get an extra 10% gift and a chest. They offer regular prizes, giveaways, events, and lotteries, and of course have a marketplace with a large selection of skins for your choice. Want to try? Check out Fast by clicking in the link in the description of this video. It really is the best way to support the channel. Thank you. Now let's get back to the video. It didn't matter if you're a North American fan or even a European fan. If you're a Counter-Strike fan, you wanted to see the number 1 team in the world of Liquid continue their post-Intel Grand Slam dominance going into the major. Their opening match was a comfortable win over Crazy, and round 2 featured a dream draw for all, a local derby. NRG hadn't beaten Liquid for the last 4 meetings in a row, and Nitro & Co were on a 23-match winning streak. Writing is on the wall. Liquid will go 2-0 up in the Swiss. Instead, despite an Elige masterclass, Liquid lose. What is going on? The best team in the world has just lost to their rivals before the playoffs even begin. Unfortunately for NRG, they get the draw of death in the next round. They have to play the Kings of Astralis, and if you were under the impression that they would crush the Americans, you'd be very wrong. And this is where the weirdness escalated to another level. Not only did NRG overachieve by defeating Liquid, but they would smash the Danes 2-0 and qualify for the playoffs going flawless. What's even more odd though, is that their run in the Challenger stage wasn't flawless. They'd already looked shaky after losing to Dream Eaters in their opening match. They suddenly switched on and started looking like the biggest threat as the tournament continued, beating the teams that were supposed to make this major normal again. At the same time, there was another North American team that was following a similar path, creating their own strange run. I'm talking about the Renegades. Now, I'm not stupid, I'm Australian. I know the boys are Australian, but for the last 4 years, they have been relocated completely in NA, playing in all the local events rather than being based out of Oceania. After a very good run at the previous major, they were invited directly to the new Legend stage, but after losing to NRG and Avangar in back-to-back best-of-ones, most hope was lost. The dream of back-to-back playoff placements was certainly a pipe dream. Instead, the boys locked the in, dispatching Dream Eaters to only await the legendary FaZe clan, and even with their backs against the wall, being down 12-15 on map 1 and 11-14 on map 3, they pushed on and survived for another day. And now, their final opponent in the Swiss, G2, and the superstar duo of Shox and Kenny S. The Aussies were grouped by them only a few months earlier and were keen for revenge. The French were outclassed. Renegades achieved the unthinkable, qualifying for the playoffs from the worst possible position. Now, you might think I'm going to be biased here. At the time, JKS and co weren't complete unknowns, but they weren't really known either. They were a decent tier 1 side, but they represented a region that had never truly broken through at this level. The previous iterations of Vox Eminor and even Immunity would look at competing at the World Championship as an achievement. Now the Australians had reached the quarterfinals in both majors of this year, and although their results outside of the majors weren't spectacular, they had some kind of aura around them at the majors in 2019. The Legend stage concluded with NRG topping out going 3-0. And Renegades magically making the playoffs, while Liquid and Astralis both take serious damage and tier 1 giants like G2, Mouse, FaZe and NIP get knocked out. Still, at least all the top 3 ranked teams actually made it to the playoffs. We were all hoping for an Astralis and Liquid grand final. What a dream matchup. Would Liquid still be able to confirm their #1 status by winning a major? But once the bracket was unveiled, we were shocked to see that the dream was completely crushed right in front of us. It wasn't possible. Astralis, Liquid, Na'Vi and NRG were on the same side of the bracket. And worst of all, Astralis and Liquid was just the quarterfinal match. All of this only meant one thing though. If all the favourites are on one side of the bracket, who's on the other? Vitality, ENCE, Renegades, and a team ranked 27th in the world? Avangar? Who the hell are they? And how did they get so deep? A rookie Kazakhstani squad with a Russian in-game leader. Their role player Sanji was attending his first and only ever major. Buster, Kickit and Jame were all playing their third. Adrem was the key veteran, joining the ranks just 2 months earlier. He was a major winner and was playing his 12th major. There's a saying that we have back home, called doing a Bradbury. It means having an unexpected success with poor luck or even misfortune for others. And this couldn't describe Avangar's run any better. A true miracle. Avangar turned a few heads at the previous major in Poland, almost making playoffs as an unknown team. But coming into Germany, they were still just another unnotable regional squad, as they hadn't really proven themselves in other tournaments. In the Challenger stage alone, weak units like Complexity, Greyhound and even Forza outranked them. With a placement of 3-2 in the Swiss, they barely made it to the Challenger stage. And honestly, didn't have to beat anyone that was decent to advance. Even the wins versus Complexity and Hellraisers were only in best of ones. The Legend stage saw the youngsters getting pumped by ENCE, but recovering from early pressure, they responded by upsetting Renegades and Liquid in best of ones, and beating the French giant of G2 in a best of 3. The quarterfinals saw them facing Vitality, a true David versus Goliath battle. Jame and co had just witnessed Renegades upsetting ENCE in the opening round, so they knew that the biggest obstacle on their side of the bracket would only be the French. Beat them, and there could be a serious Cinderella story emerging. Avangar upset Vitality on their own pick of Mirage, but lost their own of Inferno. But just like the third map decider versus G2, they outclassed in the first half again, posting a 12-3 at the turn. Jame had just outcooled 2 major champions and the world's best rookie in ZywOo. The semi-final saw them face the Australians in a rematch from the Legend stage. Jacob was the only player on Renegades that had experience of playing in a major semi-final. Liaz and Gratis Faction were playing just their second ever major. Vanguard gave their opposition 2 map points in Mirage, but closed in overtime, and completely overwhelmed them on Dust 2. They had turned this broken and dysfunctional playoff bracket into a major grand final appearance. Adren in his 12th ever major was now hoping to lift another trophy like he did with Gambit just 2 years prior. Jane becomes an absolute icon. His unique approach to the game tactically, as well as economy management with Sanji, makes them a fan favourite. And this entire roster becomes the most extreme proof that Berlin was unlike any other major in history. Vanguard went from being ranked almost outside of the top 30 coming into the event. In fact, they were the worst ranked team to ever make it into the grand finals of a major at the time. The only team who has beaten this record is Gamer Legion, who made the grand final in the most historic Cinderella run at the last CSGO major. But the thing is, if you want to write yourself into the history books, you've got to beat the best to be the best. And for a Vanguard, there was one final boss that they had to overcome. The one and only Astralis, who were going for their 4th major in CSGO and their 3rd win in a row. But Astralis had already looked weak, losing 0-2 to the 2nd best American team in NRG. Maybe this could be possible. Yep, who am I kidding? It wasn't. Zonic probably slapped each of his players a couple of times after their show with NRG, and instantly they snapped back into their form, cruising through the major as if it was some online tier 3 tourney. The legendary Liquid vs Astralis quarterfinal, the early grand final? Yeah, more like the grand final time Liquid was ever relevant. 16-8 and 16-13, Liquid caught the dookie. It was over. Next, NRG. NRG showed that they had the skill. 16-10, 16-9. Nope. It didn't even get close. Please, CS gods, give us at least a good watch in the grand final. The audience was ready to roar in support of the underdog. 16-6 and 16-5. That was it. The dream was over. Astralis left their last major trophy and etched their dynasty into history. Even though the entire major was proof that anything can happen, Astralis just had to remind us that it's very hard to ignore the status quo, that inevitably you are going to stumble upon the bigger fish, and when it sets sight on you, there is no escape. In the end, if you can't pull it over the line, is your success even going to be remembered? Will it even matter? NRG, Renegades, Vanguard. 3 organizations that made it beyond everyone's expectations, and despite all the odds, they've made it further than other, richer organizations with legendary players. If we would close the curtains here, it would sound like a beautiful ending. But the reality is sadly darker. All teams that overperform like this get torn apart by the rich organizations. Everyone gets a slice. They kick out their underperformers and use the new, uncovered players as band-aids. Even when they don't split the teams apart, they buy the entire rosters. The small orgs get the bag, but fans immediately forget what they have managed to build, and they become irrelevant. As someone that primarily works in Tier 2, I've seen this story just too many times, and it's heartbreaking. Whenever a major concludes, it's prime time for roster shuffling. Teams that failed are looking to make upgrades, and smaller organizations often get offers they simply cannot refuse in a financially very difficult space. For Crazy, they lost Nexa and Hunter to G2, and their lineup was never the same again. They attempted to rebuild, but that chemistry was lost and never found. The remaining players became irrelevant at the pro level not too long after as well. Dream Eaters remained the purest one-off version of the miracle. Crad and Forrester were the only 2 to have a continued successful career. Everyone else fell off, and their story and legacy was unfortunately tarnished with their head coach getting permanently banned by Valve for his overwhelming abuse of the coach bug. Oceania had its greatest major run ever through Renegades. This world championship wouldn't have put JKS on the map without the success of himself around the boys. They were quickly sold to 100 Thieves, and JKS later left to pursue a career in international squads. We may never have seen him go on to play with Complexity, G2 and Liquid. We will never see FlyQuest come close to the achievements of Renegades in 2019, but one can dream. North America was peaking. Liquid and NRG were both inside the top 6 in the world. If Na'Vi weren't upset by Stanislaw in the quarterfinals, then Zeus may have continued playing for at least another few years. Nobody expected an embarrassing early exit from the playoffs would trigger the end of the Zeus era and send him into retirement. After their success on the major, NRG were poached by evil geniuses. Vanguard making the grand final was absolute cinema, and showed that they could seize a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity with a great playoff bracket. After the dust settled, they were bought by Virtus Pro. In 2026, the gap between Tier 1 and 2 isn't large. In fact, you might say it's all molded together now. But 7 years ago, it was teams like these who showed how good the lower division squads really are, how close they were to bridging that separation. Counter-Strike today has changed. We are long past from the era of minors and major qualifications in today's VRS ranking model, yet still, we see the same stories like this repeat, with Foot, an academy team that managed to break through into Tier 1 through pure dedication, just announcing that they are splitting apart after their run at the major due to individual offers from bigger orgs. The question stands, could a major like this happen again, or did Berlin belong to a version of Counter-Strike that no longer really exists? I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd really appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe. Thank you, see you all next time.